If you're a regular visitor to this channel, you're probably, just like me, a bibliophile. We love reading books, talking about books, buying and collecting books. I understand that this isn't the best representation of the subject matter. I'm moving house next week and my entire life is in boxes. Mainly dog food boxes. You can find pretty much any book that's ever been written in a bookshop, a used bookshop, or online, or a library. Or a library. Paper, audio, and digital. But how did we get here? It's time for a history lesson. Don't switch off. It will be informative and fun. Super fun. The story of the humble book is intrinsically linked to the story of human civilization. They've been leapfrogging each other for about 6,000 years. Before then, there is evidence of ancient symbols and proto-languages, pictographs and ideographs. But to get to the first book, we first need a critical mass of people using the same words and reproducing them. The Sumerians of Mesopotamia, that's modern day Iraq, they developed irrigation, farming, economy and trade. The need for simple organisation and logistics led to them writing symbols on wet clay tablets. So it's like this very natural emerging human property that's repeated around the world. Wherever you get large numbers of people clumping together and building communities, language and writing develops. This intellectual leap was inevitable and it keeps developing and evolving throughout history. Language and communication becomes more and more complex. But this is the story of the evolution of the physical book. How did we get from cave paintings of a fat horse to reading the Da Vinci Code on your phone? Blasphemy on so many levels. I'm not knocking clay tablets, they do the job just fine, but they do have some obvious drawbacks. Paper doesn't shatter into 100 pieces when you drop it on the floor. And could you imagine a door-to-door encyclopedia salesman in ancient Sumeria? That would weigh a ton. I'm joking, of course. I told you this would be fun. The next big step in technology is the use of paper or paper-like materials. Proper paper, you know, when you get the proper pulpy mush and water it down and squeeze it out and actually make real paper, that technology didn't surface until the 2nd century in China. But the word paper is derived from papyrus. The Egyptians, as long ago as about 3000 BC, would take the pith of the papyrus plant and flatten it out and cut out pages and then join them together side by side and then roll them up into a scroll. Around the same time in southern and eastern Asia, they would take palm leaves and stack them up on top of each other and weigh them down with a big block of wood. So we've got the basic composition of a book, lots of layers of pages with writing on them, but it's not quite a book yet. Close, but no cigar. Similar techniques with local variations were seen all over the ancient world. Just get yourself some sort of durable leaf or fibre or even an animal skin and something to write with, and hey presto, you've got yourself a scrolly, booky tablet thing. And then came the Codex. What have the Romans ever done for us? Ancient Rome, around the time of Julius Caesar, the 1st century AD. In fact, Julius Caesar may very well have been the first person to ever own or commission a codex. He was in the right place at the right time to be the first bibliophile. A codex takes that stack of pages and binds them together down one side. Sometimes the pages would fold out like an old style scroll, but this is the birth of the book as we know it. Again, techniques varied over time and location. Bindings were glued, stitched, tied together with some sort of string. There was a rudimentary ring binder system, but the pages were still made of papyrus and parchment until the more modern Chinese papermaking method was adopted much later. Fun fact, vellum, which is a parchment of calf skin, that's baby cow's skin, is still used by the British government to record Acts of Parliament, and it's only made by one company, one place in the entire country, and it's only 10 minutes down the road. We could drive there right now and see the stretched skin of a dead baby animal hanging in the window if we really wanted to.
Yeah, there's fine.
About there?
More that way a little bit.
That way?
Yeah, that's it.
There it is. Vellum.
Great.
The evolution of the book slowed down a bit for the next few hundred years until a key moment in history, the Battle of Talas in 751. The Abbasid Empire defeated the Imperial Tang dynasty of China in modern-day Kazakhstan, causing a transference of technology, including silk weaving, cooking techniques, and advanced paper making. The roots of the book were returning to Mesopotamia. The Islamic world embraced paper, building mills in Baghdad, Damascus, Cairo, and soon all over the region, eventually driving trade with Europe. It took until around the 13th century and then the Renaissance for the demand for good quality paper to really pick up in Europe. Up until then, each book was hand scribed. A book was an extravagant thing, one of a kind. The demand was actually for more books, affordable to more people, which drove the printing revolution, which needed the better quality paper instead of the traditional papyrus. Woodblock printing originated in China hundreds of years before. It does pop up in Korea, Japan, and Egypt over the centuries, but the big cultural splash was made in Europe, even though it wasn't invented there. It's a real global story. Various civilizations have developed the materials, the production, the very receptacle of art and knowledge for thousands of years, until we arrive at what Time Life magazine call the most important invention of the second millennium. No, not hummus, not leg warmers, but the movable what's it called? The movable type printing press. Around 1440, Johannes Gutenberg reveals a machine. That's the wrong picture. Reveals a machine that can print over 4,000 pages a day. That's over 100 times faster than manual printing and leaves the hand-scribed method in the dust. Before long, similar presses were in full swing all over Europe, creating a cascade effect. Books were now vastly cheaper. Supply created demand, demand created supply. It was an unstoppable industry. But the impact of all of this is far more important and era-defining than the simple economics of producing goods that people will buy. The seismic shift in the availability of books means mass communication. Governments and the church no longer have sole control of information. Ideas and opinions are circulated. People learn to read because there are books to read. Gutenberg's press wasn't just a big lump of wood and metal. It was the tool that changed the structure of society, ushering in the democratization of knowledge. Much better than leg warmers. Let's get back to the physical form of the book. The codex system, coupled with the ease of printing, means that the book is pretty much the same now as it was 600 years ago. Materials are sometimes a bit more plasticky, press machines are hooked up to giant computers probably, but essentially we still get a book. The next big revolution is the Kindle, the e-reader, the digital book. But they don't completely replace the dead tree version. They coexist quite happily, for now at least. Bookbinding became an art form. The familiar format of a hardcover with a proper spine and the stitching and the nice lettering on the cover surfaced around the 18th century. A really nicely made book was a symbol of wealth and class. So we started to see a separation of different presentations, different editions of exactly the same text, which brings us to the 20th century and the here and now. Hello, my name's Moid and I'm a book addict. This is a paperback. There are variations in size, but for argument's sake, it's a standard book. Thicker, but still floppy cover, cheap to produce, held together with glue. It may be small and humble, but it's been the backbone of the industry for the best part of 200 years. Improvements in manufacturing allowed the publishers to knock out books cheaper and faster than ever before. The mass market was waiting. In the 1930s, Penguin started mass producing reprints of classics. In America, pocketbooks followed suit. The rest of the world jumped on that trend. Paperbacks were available everywhere, not just dedicated bookshops. Airports, grocery stores, bus stations, newsstands. Production cost was low and demand was high. Then this story becomes more about the publishers, the big money that follows a successful industry. But for a while, there was equilibrium. Have you ever heard of the paperback original revolution of the 1950s? Of course you haven't. In 1950, Gold Medal Books, a division of Fawcett Publications, started printing pocket paperbacks en masse. But instead of reprinting old classics, things that people have already read before, these were original stories, mainly westerns and mysteries. The public loved it. They sold millions and millions. So obviously, other publishers and countries started doing the same thing. The success of the paperback led to reduced magazine sales, and most of the talent moved over to book publishing. And this little fella has remained in our lives to this day. Then we have the hardcover or the hardback. For decades now, the tradition has been to release a new book in this format first if it's expected to sell a few copies, because there's more profit in a hardback and you sell more copies of a book in the first few weeks and months. Clearly they cost more to make and buy, but there are still varying degrees of quality, from literally taking a paperback and wrapping it in a hardcover to thicker paper, sewn edges, fancy dust jackets, exotic materials, and can you pass me that book? And even sprayed edges. They're obviously tougher, more prominent on the bookshelf, and more attractive to collectors. Speaking of collectors, certain printings of paperbacks, first edition hardcovers, rare books in general, or just nice copies of a vintage book have a market. You can own a little piece of literature or art history, or 27 boxes full. So the new book publishing industry has a pretty rigid standard, but there's also a thriving boutique publishers scene. All the big publishers will produce deluxe versions of classic titles, something like this, and sometimes they just reissue a fancy version of a fairly modern book. But companies like Centipede and Subterranean Press will take classic and modern books and make hyper lovely versions of them that cost more than a small car. But my favourite is the Folio Society. For the last 75 years they've been making beautiful hardcover books with illustrations in a box. And I suppose we have to end the evolution of the book with the digital form, the Kindle or whatever. Personally, I don't have one. I'm not against the idea. Reading is reading. I'm just a bit old school. There's something very special about collecting books. They conjure up memories of the story itself. I love the simplicity of a vintage paperback and the craftsmanship of something like this. I sometimes just sit in this library for hours and hours just staring at the spines. And I can't do that right now. It's like a pet shop in here.
Hello, my name's Moid, and I'm a book addict.